December 6, 1991, Austin, Texas. A crime so shocking, it scarred a city forever. 4 teenage girls, a yogurt shop, bound, gagged, shot, and then fire. For nearly 3 decades, this chilling case stayed unsolved. Generations of detectives tried, families waited, communities demanded answers. Now, in 2025, a breakthrough has finally revealed the truth. The man responsible was hiding in plain sight, part of a terrifying pattern of violence stretching across the United States. This is the story of the yogurt shop murders, solved after 34 years. December 6, 1991. In Austin, Texas, a city known more for its live music and laid-back charm than for violent crime, the holiday season was just beginning. For 4 teenage girls, it was the end of a long week and the start of a weekend. 17-year-old Eliza Thomas, 17-year-old Jennifer Harbison, her 15-year-old sister Sarah, and 13-year-old Amy Ayers were finishing their shift at a local, I can't believe it's yogurt, shop. It was a typical teenage job in a place that felt like the safest corner of the world. They were the daughters and sisters of Austin. Jennifer and Sarah Harbison, inseparable. Eliza, a bright student at Lanier High, and Amy, the youngest, just an 8th grader at Burnett Middle School. They were good students, athletes, babysitters, the kind of kids who represented the promise of a community. Their lives were a tapestry of sleepovers, homework, and dreams for the future. A future that was just beginning to unfold. The shop was scheduled to close at 11 p.m. The last customers had left, the chairs were stacked, and the familiar mundane routine of shutting down for the night began. But in the quiet moments after the doors were locked, that comforting normalcy was shattered. An unimaginable evil slipped through the cracks of this ordinary Friday night, turning a place of innocent joy into a stage for unspeakable horror. Just before midnight, a passing police officer noticed smoke billowing from the roof of the shopping center. The Austin Fire Department was dispatched, expecting a routine commercial fire, perhaps an electrical short. They forced their way through the locked front door, battling thick, acrid smoke and intense heat. But as they began to knock down the flames, the beam of a flashlight cut through the haze and landed on something that made it clear this was no accident. In the back of the shop, amidst the charred debris and pools of water from the fire hoses, they found them. The 4 girls. They had been bound with their own clothing, gagged and sexually assaulted. Each had been shot in the head, execution style. The fire was not just an afterthought. It was a deliberate, desperate attempt to obliterate the evidence, to burn away the atrocity that had occurred. But the flames couldn't erase the truth. They only served to compound the horror, creating a chaotic and contaminated crime scene that would challenge investigators for decades to come. When homicide detectives arrived, the scene that greeted them was one of calculated carnage. The news spread through the city like a shockwave, shattering Austin's self-image as a safe, progressive haven. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. The cash register was untouched. This was something far more sinister. The city awoke on Saturday morning to a new, terrifying reality. For the Austin Police Department, it was the beginning of a sprawling, complex investigation into a crime so brutal, it would be forever seared into the public consciousness, a dark chapter known simply as the yogurt shop murders. The investigation seemed impossible from the start. The intense blaze, followed by the deluge of water from fire hoses, had created a chaotic scene, a forensic nightmare. The fire had not only destroyed valuable evidence, but the efforts to extinguish it had washed away what little remained. What little biological material could be recovered was a complex, contaminated mixture. In the early 1990s, forensic science was still in its relative infancy. DNA testing required large, pristine samples, a luxury investigators simply didn't have. The technology to separate and identify DNA from multiple sources within a single degraded sample was the stuff of science fiction. With physical evidence offering few clues, detectives cast an incredibly wide net. The city of Austin was gripped by fear, and the pressure to find those responsible was immense. They explored every conceivable motive, from a simple robbery gone wrong to local gang activity. But the investigation also veered into more sensational territory, fueled by the satanic panic sweeping the nation. Rumors about occult rituals consumed precious time and resources, leading investigators down a series of frustrating dead ends. After months of exhaustive work, a supposed breakthrough came. 4 local teenagers, Robert Springsteen, Michael Scott, Maurice Pierce, and Forrest Wellborn, were brought in for questioning. Over hours and days of intense, high-pressure interrogations, detectives elicited a series of confessions. The city breathed a collective sigh of relief. It seemed the monsters had been caught. 2 of the young men, Springsteen and Scott, were ultimately convicted. But from the very beginning, something felt deeply wrong. The confessions, the very foundation of the prosecution's case, were riddled with contradictions. The men gave conflicting accounts of the crime with details that didn't match the physical evidence. It was a narrative that seemed to shift and contort with each retelling, coerced from scared teenagers in an interrogation room. Defense attorneys fought tirelessly, and years later, appellate courts overturned the convictions. They cited crucial constitutional violations, including the fact that the defendants' confessions were used against each other at trial, violating their Sixth Amendment right to confront their accusers. But the final, undeniable blow to the prosecution's case came not from a law book, but from a laboratory. By 2008, forensic technology had made incredible leaps. A previously untestable DNA sample, recovered from the youngest victim, Amy Ayers, was finally analyzed. The results were stunning. The DNA belonged to an unknown male and did not match any of the 4 accused men. After spending nearly a decade in prison, the so-called yogurt shop defendants were exonerated. They were finally free, but they had lost their youth to a flawed investigation. For the families of Eliza, Jennifer, Sarah, and Amy, the news was devastating. Their search for justice was reset to 0. The case that had haunted Austin for years was now officially cold, leaving them with the agonizing knowledge that while the wrong men had been punished, the real killer was still out there, living freely. As decades passed, science advanced. Cold case units across the country began taking another look at dormant files. In Austin, investigators preserved what little evidence they had: tiny DNA samples under fingernails, hair fragments, and ballistic shell casings. By the mid-2010s, genetic genealogy was changing crime solving. Using publicly available DNA databases, detectives could track family lines and narrow down suspects with incredible precision. In the case of the yogurt shop murders, this tool became a breakthrough. A partial DNA profile recovered years ago suddenly provided a lead. Ballistics, too, gave investigators new hope. Shell casings found at the crime scene could now be matched to weapons known from other unsolved crimes across state lines. And slowly, a name began to surface: Robert Eugene Brashers. The name that would eventually be tied to the yogurt shop murders belonged to a man already well known to law enforcement: Robert Eugene Brashers. His criminal record was a grim tapestry of escalating offenses, a life lived on the fringes, marked by a violent contempt for the law. Born in 1958, Brashers drifted through the American Midwest and South, a ghost moving from town to town, never staying long enough to attract attention. But beneath this transient existence was a predator. His criminal pattern was chillingly consistent. He targeted women and young girls with sudden, overwhelming brutality, a signature of violence that would later echo the horrific events in Austin. His run from the law began to unravel in 1998, when he was arrested in Missouri for attempted murder and sexual assault. While awaiting sentencing, Brashers escaped custody. The manhunt culminated in a tense standoff in 1999. Cornered by police and facing a lifetime behind bars, he took his own life, seemingly taking the full scope of his crimes to the grave. With his death, the active cases were closed. Officially, he was linked to only a few assaults, but his name lingered in the files of cold case detectives across the country. For years, Robert Brashers was a ghost in their files, a potential suspect in cases that had gone cold, a name without definitive proof. Then, a revolution in forensic science changed everything. Investigative genetic genealogy allowed law enforcement to build a family tree from crime scene DNA. In 2022, A previously unidentified male DNA sample from the yogurt shop was submitted for this analysis. The search pointed investigators toward one name, Robert Eugene Brashers, a deceased felon with a violent history. To confirm the link, investigators obtained a DNA sample from Brashers' own autopsy evidence. The results were definitive, a direct match. The ghost in the files now had a face. Then, detectives revisited ballistics. The shell casings from the shop were compared against a .22 caliber pistol Brashers once used. It was a perfect match. The murder weapon was identified. After more than 3 decades of false leads and agonizing uncertainty, the Austin Police Department officially named Robert Eugene Brashers as the killer. The mystery that had haunted a city for a generation was finally solved. For the families, the news was a seismic shock. There was the horror of finally seeing the face of the man responsible, but also a profound, if complicated, sense of resolution. The truth, after 34 long years, had finally been brought into the light. The confirmation of Brashers' guilt also brought bitter vindication for the men once accused. For years, the shadow of the yogurt shop murders followed Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott, despite their convictions being overturned. With Brashers revealed as the true killer, their names are finally clear. This case now stands as a devastating reminder of how rushed investigations and coerced confessions can ruin innocent lives. For Austin, the yogurt shop has never been just a store. It's a memorial, a place where innocence was stolen, and where grief lasted generations. Family members describe their relief at finally knowing the truth, even as they grieve all that was lost. The case also inspired documentaries, podcasts, and investigative reporting, keeping the memory of the girls alive. Without persistent coverage, renewed public interest, and new forensic methods, this story might have remained unfinished. Instead, it stands today as proof that no murder is ever truly a cold case. Time does not erase pain, but forensic science, and the determination of those who never stop seeking justice, can shine a light into the darkest corners. The yogurt shop murders remind us of the cruelty humans are capable of, and the resilience of families who never give up. 34 years later, justice has a name: Robert Eugene Brashers. And for Jennifer, Sarah, Eliza, and Amy, the truth is finally known.